Coming up on Theater Talk. Theater Talk is made possible in part by the CUNY TV Foundation.
Where is that boy? If he's out on his swing or caroling, if he's still on his stilts or hiding inside his fortress of quilts, please tell him I'm here.
From New York City, this is Theater Talk. I'm Susan Haskins.
And I'm Michael Riedel of the New York Post.
Michael, last night I saw a powerful and original new musical at Vineyard Theatre written from scratch by Greg Pierce, the lyricist, librettist, and John Kander, the composer and also co-librettist. The show is called Kid Victory, and it stars an awesome cast, including Brandon Flynn, Jeffrey Denman, Daniel Jenkins, and our guest, the magnificent Karen Ziemba.
Thank you, Susan.
Greg, I don't want you to give too much away.
Sure.
Because this is a very dark musical, we should say, with some twists and turns.
Yep, that is true.
But it's brand new. People don't know anything about it. So can you whet our appetite for what this show's about?
I can try. So this show is about a 17-year-old boy who lives in Kansas who has been mysteriously absent for the last 11 months, and we don't know why. So at the beginning of the show, he comes back home, and everybody's mystified by what's happened to him. He seems like a very different person. And so his family wants him to jump back into life in playing tennis and school and church and all these things.
Going to the church social, yeah.
That's right, going to the fellowship. And he just can't do it. He can't do these things. And he befriends this sort of town outcast, this woman who works in a lawn and garden store, a sort of failing store in town. And through their friendship, we get to see, flash back into some of the complex things that have happened to him in the last 11 months.
So there's a reason why he can't quite go back to the kind of normal lifestyle that his parents want him to.
There is a reason, and if you want to know, you got to come see the show.
Exactly. John, where did this idea for this show come from? I mean, the boy's from Kansas. You're from Kansas City, correct? Is there any autobiographical elements to this show at all?
Only in terms of, I know that area and I know the kind of towns in which his family lives. But as far as the material itself is concerned, we had such a good time working together on the landing that we almost immediately wanted to go back to work again. And we thought of a number of possible stories, and then we became aware of articles occasionally that were written about kids who had been abducted and who were found and returned to their families. But they all had a great deal of information and description of what it was like, how excited everybody was when the kid returned, but none of them talked about what happened then, how somebody who's been taken out of society is returned and what his life is after that. If there were descriptions of it, for instance, the abductee would say, I thought of my family and Jesus, and that's what got me through, and that's not true. And this is the story of somebody who returns and what he goes through in trying to come back.
When you were in Kansas as a child, were you in this kind of stifling, parochial atmosphere?
No, but no, in the city,
right,
the city is different.
Everything's up to date in Kansas City, right?
Right.
I swore I'd shoot the
The next person who said that. Sorry.
I used to go on trips in the country where my father's businesses were, and stop off in little towns. I got a feeling for what life was like in those towns, and then God knows there's been plenty of publicity about what they are like now. It's not a terrible place, this town. It's not like the worst, most restrictive world, but it's small, it's very Christian, and there's a certain way of living that everybody is expected to experience.
Karen, you play the mother. This is an unusual musical, I can tell from the description. What did you make of it when you were first given the script and the songs?
Well, I thought it was fascinating, and just like John and Greg are explaining, you don't think about that, what somebody is actually going through, and the people bringing this, the people who have been in the town, and now he comes back, and it's like, you want to go back to the way it was, because that's always the way life is. Life is very much, the status quo. I'm right. This is the way things are done. This is this is our, and this person has changed, and it's very frustrating, and you need to listen to that person's story and find out what is wrong with them. And sometimes people don't want to do that. They don't want to go there. And that's sort of what my issue is.
What's the style of music for this, John? Are there some showstopper John Kander tunes in there?
Since we've been working together, I don't know how to say this and make it any sense, but I just feel free. I just write. I just write whatever I feel. I don't think in terms of form. And I'm having the time of my life right now. And I can only say that I can't stop writing.
You're more prolific than ever. He's got The Beast in the Jungle coming with Susan Stroman and Tommy Thompson you're working on. You did the Scottsboro Boys a couple of years ago, which I loved. The Landing, this one. Karen, you've known this man since...
We were just talking about that.
World Goes Round?
It seems like yesterday.
But it was the World Goes Round.
That was the first time we worked together, and The World Goes Round.
Right.
An evening of...
It was a great off-Broadway show. Were you on roller skates, I remember?
That's right. Banjos, roller skates, you name it.
Do you remember the first time you met John and then with Fred Ebb, these legends of the musical theater? You were a young kid just beginning your career. You
Yes,
get to meet these guys.
and I tell, the story a lot, but I just remember it was one of the first auditions I was at where someone who was an authority and who was an icon came, which was John Kander, actually stood up and came over and introduced himself and asked me to make an adjustment on something, but he just treated me like I was royalty. I mean, it wasn't like, what else you got? He was just such a gentleman, and...
I'm going to practice that.
Yeah.
And you delivered.
Yeah.
Did you see her and go, oh, now there's a talent right away?
Yeah,
Yeah.
It was kind of apparent.
Yes, it
And
certainly
the thing
is.
but with this show, we've known each other and worked together a lot for 26 years, I figured out today.
26, wow.
And
Longer than Susan and me in theater talk.
and she started playing scenes in this show, in this piece, and I thought, I've known this person all these years, and I have no idea who she is. And I still watch every night.
This is a very different Karen Ziemba we're seeing. This show, I was sitting there thinking, that John Kander, though, can write the tunes, because although your wonderful director, Liesl Tommy, has blended together the movement and very organic piece where you're not stopping to sing. But still, I just want to read some of these song titles because they're so theatrical, the titles. Lord, Carry Me Home, A Single Tear, People Like Us, I've Got a Feeling That's Not Quite True, Where Is That Boy, I'd Rather Wait, Friends Forever, and You, If Anyone. A great song. There's a lot of just old time, not old fashioned, but old time great songs in this score.
We sit backstage and just listen and watch our, colleagues on stage, because that's one thing, John, he can't help himself. And along with Greg's lyrics, which are just so knowing and beautiful, they just know how to write a song. They know how to structure a song, but also how to make it come out of character. It's just stunning.
Greg, this may be a slightly unfair question, but since John's great collaboration was with Fred Ebb. Do you ever feel Fred Ebb sitting over your shoulder when you're writing a lyric?
I don't feel that. I mean, I have obviously like a great admiration for Fred. I think he's unbelievable. We're just doing a very different thing. When we get really excited about an idea and we're working, it's just the idea is there, and we drop everything else, you know, any other sort of showbiz thing, who's done what, resumes and things, and we just focus on the idea and the problem we're trying to solve or the character, and that stuff falls away. I think it could be hard for me if I let that sort of stay there. He's a genius.
Theatrical legend.
Yeah,
right. We got to wrap it up soon, John, but I want to ask you, when Fred died in 2004, right?
Right.
Was there ever a moment you thought, I'm not going to continue writing, or I don't know what I'm going to do now because my partner's there? You just knew you were going to barrel on?
I didn't have plans.
Right.
But then the great thing that happened was him. He really, really, I think, extended my life.
It's by Greg Pierce, John Kander, and stars the great Karen Ziemba. Kid Victory at the Vineyard Theatre. Thanks a lot for being our guest on Theatre Talk.
Thanks.
Thank you, guys.
Pleasure.
What's the point of living if your hand is always steady? If you're comatose already? What's the point of saving?
We've been trying to get Jerry Herman here for over a year now, and I'm just delighted he could be with us tonight on Theatre Talk. Jerry, welcome.
Thank you, and I'm equally delighted.
Well,
I've been looking forward to this.
Gosh, hello, Dolly, Mame, La Cage aux Folles, Mac and Mabel. I wanted to tell you, on the way over here today, I was, it's a true story, in the subway, and there was a young girl there whistling, "I'll be wearing ribbons down my back." I tried to collect a royalty for you, but I want to take her lunch money. But it occurred to me, there must be all over the place people whistling a Jerry Herman tune, humming a Jerry Herman tune, singing a Jerry Herman tune.
It's probably the most satisfying part of what I do, to get into a taxi and to hear a song of mine on the radio and have the taxi driver whistle along with it and not have the vaguest idea that the man who wrote it is sitting in the back. I just sit there and grin.
Where does this gift for this melody that catches in everyone's mind the first time they hear it come from? Do you have any sense of how you come up with these gorgeous tunes?
I honestly have not the vaguest idea, because it's all in here, and it was never studied. It was never anything that I went to school for. I went to school to learn how to be an architect and a designer. Mm-hmm. And I started writing songs, and my mother made me go and take those songs to Frank Lesser, who she got an appointment with through she didn't know him, but she had a hairdresser and somebody, you know, it was one of those, I call it the mother mafia. and she made an appointment and actually had to force me to go.
Really?
I said, he's going to laugh at me. I'm a kid. And
how old were you?
Oh, I must have been 17, you know. Mm-hmm. And I had these songs that I thought were cute, but that's about the strongest adjective I could use about them. But she, of course, being a mother, wanted me to show them to Frank, so I went, and he changed my life.
He said, "You've got to go to the musical
He changed
theater?
my life in the course of about 3 hours. He kept me there all afternoon.
Did he teach you something? Did he tell you? What did he?
He was such a mentor to me. That afternoon he took out he had pads of very long, like artist's paper on his desk, mm-hmm. and lots of colored crayons and markers. And he drew a freight train. And he drew a bright red caboose. And he said, the reason you know how to write songs instinctively is that you always have a caboose on your songs. And he said, never forget that. And he quoted his own, I'm going to get you on a slow boat to China, all to myself alone. And he said, the all to myself alone doesn't come until that last moment, and explains the song.
And that's the caboose.
And you know, I almost never write a song that doesn't have, there'll be no Blue Monday in your Sunday clothes, which is the capper of that.
Yeah.
That's the
Or I
caboose.
won't send roses, which goes through a whole litany of why this girl should stay away from him. And then the last line is, I won't send roses, and roses suit you so.
Boom.
Caboose. That's the caboose of all time.
But you're not a trained musician.
I'm not.
Did you no piano lessons, no theory, no?
I took piano lessons and the teacher ran out of the house. She said, Mrs. Herman, I don't know what to do with him. I was trying to learn The Happy Farmer, or, you know, da da ba 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 ba. And she played it for me. And I said, oh, I can do that. And I sat at the piano and played exactly what she played. I had never heard it before.
Really, just
Because I have that,
the ear. Yeah.
that gift, and that's a gift. That's nothing that I deserve credit for. That's something that I was born with.
Well, if you have the gift for the music, is it a gift you also have for the lyrics, or do the lyrics take you more effort, more blood, sweat, and
Lyrics
tears?
are much more difficult to write, I think, for anyone than music. But what has happened to me is that I think of them as one thing. I don't think of myself as a man who writes poetry or a man who writes music. I think of myself as a songwriter because they happen simultaneously in my case. And
that's why you never sought a lyricist partner when you were starting out.
Oh, no.
Just, when you would write a song, you would come up with the...
in fact, the interesting truth is that I've received more Best Lyricist awards than I have Best Composer awards.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. Your songs are very well constructed. I wonder if your training as an architect or designer influenced you in some way as a composer, just in the construction of a song, or even the construction of a show, because your shows are brilliantly constructed too.
I do think that the two art forms are very similar because they all use hundreds of different elements that have to come together to make one new thing. And when I'm designing a home, I have to think about the finished product before I go out and buy a sofa or before I find a paint chip. I have to know what that finished room is going to look like. And it's exactly the same with the musical.
Really? So you see what MAME looks like before you start writing
Before
a
you
song?
hire Angela Lansbury, right?
I knew what the Dolly number was going to look like. I had hoped that it would look like what it looked like. And then Gower Champion, God bless him, heard my vision of it and put it on the stage twice as effectively as what I told him. But I told him that I saw a film once early in my life called Lillian Russell with Alice Faye, and that she sang in a restaurant, and the waiters joined her. And I said, they all had these white aprons on, and I said, I see Dolly coming down a staircase in flaming red, and the waiters, and I described this whole scene to him, and his eyes got like saucers. And then, of course, a couple of months later, I saw that in front of my eyes in Detroit, and it was overwhelming because when you have a vision like that, you don't always end up seeing that on the stage.
Yeah.
But I did with Gower.
Now, Hello, Dolly came after Milk and Honey.
Yeah.
And it was it David Merrick who approached you, having seen Milk and Honey, and brought you into
yes, and that's
into
an
Dolly?
interesting story because David Merrick kind of summoned me to his office. You know, you just are told to arrive at David Merrick's office, and it was the most intimidating office I have ever walked into, and of course that was his ploy.
You're right. Yeah.
He wanted to sit there, and this man with a black hair and black mustache and dark eyes, looking kind of satanical, was sitting behind a desk, surrounded by all this red, and this young, scared kid, and I really was. I was absolutely petrified of this man.
Now, wasn't he a little worried because he thought you were an ethnic composer?
That's the first thing he said to
Yes.
me. He said, I saw your show and I think you're very talented, but I don't know if you're American enough. Well, I mean, you can't say that to me. I had two parents who were teachers in the New York school system. I said, American enough. There's nobody more apple pie and Abe Lincoln than I am. And he looked at me skeptically, and I knew I had to prove it to him. So I said, do you have any kind of material that I could look at? And he went to a shelf and he pulled out a little script, and it said on the cover, Matchmaker Draft Number 1. It's my most precious possession.
Oh, you have it. Yeah.
I have it. Dog-eared now, but it's so precious to me because that's what I read that night until the wee hours, and I started to work on 4 songs.
Really? What 4 songs did you work on?
I wrote Put On Your Sunday Clothes exactly as you know it and exactly as it appeared in the show. I got so excited by the imagery of the period and the Thornton Wilder line that Mike Stewart had very wisely kept in his version of this. Put on your Sunday clothes, Barnaby, we're going to New York. And it just said everything to me.
Yeah.
And I knew that was a song, and I started to think about horses' hooves, and I went da-dum, ba-dum, bum, 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 and that song just flew out. It honestly flew out of me. It was frightening because I wanted this job, like the guy in chorus line. I wanted it so badly.
And what other songs?
And then I wrote the opening number. I Put My Hand In, because I wanted to settle with the audience what Dolly was about instantly. I didn't want them to have to get used to the fact that she was a busybody and that she mixed in everything, that she fixed people up. That was her, profession. So I wrote that, and I wrote Call on Dolly as a counterpoint to that, and then I wrote the whole dancing sequence because there was a lovely section in the script where Dolly taught Cornelius how to dance.
Yeah, wonderful.
How long did it take you? When did you go back to David Merrick?
4 days.
4 days later.
And Merrick loved the songs?
He loved the songs, and he loved, I think even more than the songs, the fact that I was able to do them that quickly.
Yeah.
Right. But what is amazing to me, Jerry, is that just to hear you, how you conceived of Put On Your Sunday Clothes, and I put my hand in here thinking this is what I want to establish with this character. These are things I would think that someone who works in the musical theater would have to sort of develop over time, trial and error, experimentation, these sort of basic rules of the writing musical. You seem to have grasped them instantly.
I think that's part of the gift that I was given, to just know what to musicalize and what not to musicalize. That is as important as knowing how to do it. You can't. So often I'll go to a show and I'll hear a song that I know is not the highlight of that scene, and then the great moment comes in the scene, and there's no song there, and I want to say, boy, you goofed. You know. Yeah. You have to know what to turn into music. What is the emotional high point of the scene.
Would you mind playing us out on the piano?
I'd love
We've set
to.
up?
I'd love to.
Terrific. Jerry, you said put on your Sunday clothes just flowed right out of you. Can you show us how that happened?
I started with just thinking about the sound of horses' hooves in 1890, and put on your Sunday clothes when you feel down and out. Strut down the street and have your picture took. Dressed like a dream, your spirits seem to turn about. That Sunday shine is a certain sign that you feel as fine as you look.
Jerry, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for being our guest tonight.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Our thanks to the Friends of Theater Talk for their significant contribution to this production. Theater Talk is made possible in part by the Frederick Lowe Foundation, the Corey and Bob Donnelly Charitable Fund, the Noel Coward Foundation, Carrie J. Fries, the Dorothy Strelson Foundation, and the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs.
We welcome your questions or comments for Theater Talk. Thank you